Beautiful. Well, it is, again, such a huge honor and pleasure to be here today. One thing I was just thinking after a series of talks, inspiration comes from the Latin inspirare, which means to breathe in. And so just, okay. Wachie, David, Nitishnakasen, Dane, Eshnakastoyan, Vancouver Niduchin, Nishtakila. As you might have guessed, what I've just said is, hello, my name is David. What's your name? I come from Vancouver. What about you? And this is in the language Ilamoan, also called Moose Cree. And I think just the simple fact that myself, not growing up near this community, that someone was able to make a lesson of this content and a bit more. I was able to practice, train myself on the pronunciation, and then connect with the very creator who put it together is from that community. I find that amazing. Now, if you know me, you know that I'm a polyglot. So a polyglot is someone who knows many languages. I speak around 7, no bits of others. And one thing that I truly believe is that I don't have any special skill. I don't believe that I have some special ability to learn languages more than your typical person. What I do think is that I have had access to opportunities to learn. And so what I want us to believe here today is that any language can be learned and spoken by anyone. I want us to believe that this is possible and to see the effects that can happen. So just take a moment and your own self and think. What is stopping you right now from learning any language that you might want to learn? Whether it's for work, for school, for fun. With that thought in mind, it's no trade secret. We're talking about IP today, among other things for the company. You know, it's not a trade secret how someone learns a language. The phrase that I use to describe this is called repeated meaningful use. Many of you have likely learned English or other languages. You know, the way anyone learns a language is you are exposed to it through time. You're listening, you're reading, you can comprehend a bit. It's compelling and interesting. And then it's iterative. Then through time, you start producing it. You try to speak. Ideally, you get some feedback. Someone tells you, like, oh no, it's not this, it's that. Or like, the pronunciation is actually this. And then ideally, you have a guide, someone who can assess where you are, tell you where to go next. So what is stopping anyone right now from being able to learn any language? Again, I believe it is access. Right now, it is incredibly expensive to make content, educational content. I mean, did you know that as of 2022, it takes, on average, 22,000 US dollars to produce 1 hour of content? That's almost double what it was 10 years ago. It's expensive, and what are the chances that there's going to be a lesson for your specific situation, for your job or your community or your nation? It's expensive to make. The other part is the instruction and the learning. Most people, when they think they want to learn a language, maybe they'll go to a language learning app. You'll go to the App Store, talk about friends. What have you used? The thing that we have found at our company, Immersio, is that these companies, they're not working to empower other creators and other instructors to make their own content. Right? They have their own teams making it. They have their corporate content that they're giving to others. They're not empowering others to teach. I mean, yes, you might be able to find sites that there's no shortage of You put a little video on there, you might have multiple choice quizzes, things like this. But nothing out there is guaranteed, is tailored for languages, where if you've learned a language, you know you need to do a lot of listening. You need instant feedback. You need a way to use it with others. And the other access point is that personalized feedback and learning. You know, there was no, before our pilot with Ricky and Moose Cree, you know, there was no Moose Cree content, there was no instructor I could talk to easily to get feedback on this. Now, of course, there's no shortage of tutors and tutoring places you can go to have that, but it can be quite expensive. On the average, it takes 600 hours of learning to become proficient in a language. So what if, I say, what if there was a way that you could take any of the content that's out there, coming from experts wanting their expertise to not only be shared, like we can do on social media, but learnable. Content that could be structured in the way that they can give to you in bit-sized pieces. People talking about their culture and their words. What if there was the technology that could take that as an input, so to speak, and it could output your own language learning experience, so that any learner could speak on demand, so that it was convenient for you to be able to, offline, learn a language, practice that pronunciation, and go to others? And what if these speakers could be accessible to you anywhere in the world? What if there was a platform that could connect, or just a process to connect the creators and those instructors and the people who are learning in one area? It is possible, and I'm not saying that we've mastered it yet, but if we can solve these issues together, then truly any language can be learned and spoken by anyone. And it's our belief that when we can literally speak each other's languages and understand, then we're going to be better at solving problems. For example, when we talk about diversity in companies, how many boards have you been on where they talk about linguistic diversity? How many languages are spoken on your board? With Indigenous languages, when I mentioned it earlier, when one of the first content pieces was put out, she told us that when her mother saw her language being represented on the screen, it just brought her the tears. Because now it's just a glimpse of another way to bring another voice here. Because with languages, when you learn one, it's not simply a matter of taking all the labels and applying it to concepts that you already know. This is why no word directly translates to another. When you learn another language, and especially one that is different than your own, you have a different way to conceptualize the world, a different way, literally, of thinking. So just imagine that you are learning a language about a people and a river that, in English, we might just call it a river on the map. Imagine that in that culture, that river is a being. It's an entity, right, that has a history. It has respect for it. Imagine that traditional practices, whether we're talking with our Indigenous partners or what we can learn from the ancient languages in the ancient world. Imagine that we can understand them in their own context and then apply it to our own. This is the power of language, to bring together literally different voices to speak together to the problems that we have. And so blended, what we call this is blended learning done right for all. That if we can empower institutions and those instructors and the learners to be able to communicate with each other, to put this cycle together so that each person can focus on what they do best, creating the content, managing the student relationships, and the learners who need that personalized feedback, then we believe that any language can be learned and spoken by anyone. And what's really beautiful is that it's not just literally languages, but this spreads into the language of math, right? The language of music, the language of a given culture, right? The language of environmental stewardship. So much of our talk yesterday about the language that we use. But one thing I'm reminded in this is that any tools that we have can only be useful if there are more people using it. So again, do you truly believe that any language can be learned and spoken by anyone? We believe that it can be possible and it can be doable, but we're just at the beginning stages. And so what I am encouraged today is the voices that are happening here, the talks that we're having around these different discussions, if we can bring together, instead of siloing each other, those who are the thought leaders, those who are teaching and those who can learn, then truly any language can be learned and spoken by anyone. Thank you.